I'm trying to see if this actually works. Live chat. There we go. Jesus. That's great. It's not telling me on the dashboard that I'm live. Let's see. Why are you drifting? Inge.
Not. And we actually don't put that in between two different statements, but instead we're going to put this before one conditional statement. So what I'm going to do, the opposite statement is actually going to return false because the not keyword gives us the opposite of true, which is going to be false. So if we go into the game and hit play, then what we should see in the output is nothing being printed because this actually printed false instead of true. Now, if we hit stop and then go to our script and then change this to false, then it's going to return the opposite of false, which is going to be true. So if we go into the game and hit play, then what we should see is this statement is true. And now if we were to hit stop and make this into a numerical example, so I'm just going to delete this. And what we're going to do is say if not 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, then we're going to have
it won't
in arithmetic on Boolean and number. What happens if we actually don't do this? So I'm going to go into the script and go to our. You can't compare not with a number. So what we need to do is insert parentheses like this so that we know that we're trying to compare this statement specifically. So 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. That's going to return true, but the not is tied in front of it, so it's actually going to return false. So if we go into the game, hit play, then what we should see is this statement not returning false. So that is basically logical operators inside of Roblox Studio, and that is something important that we need to know about for our conditionals. Now, the next set of operators I'm going to teach you is what's called relational operators. And this has to do with the way we've been comparing conditional numbers. And this has to do with the way we've been comparing equations inside of our conditionals. So I'm just going to delete everything we've had in this code up until this point. And what I'm going to do is say if 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, just like this. So relational operators fall into what we've been doing with this comparison inside of here. So if 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, which it is, then it's going to return true. This is one relational operator, which is the equals relational operator. But there's actually multiple different ways we can compare this relational operator that isn't just restricted to the equal.
Yeah. Six. Bro. Okay, yeah.
And there's actually we're going to top left of my this with a squiggly line that looks like this. So I'm going to hold shift and then I'm going to hit the squiggly line. Now for me, it's located on the
Sorry, I won't print. Wait, no. I will print because it does not equal that. But if it does, it won't print. Yeah.
Top left of my keyboard, so I hope you're able to see it. But when you do make this squiggly line before the equal sign, this represents not equals. So if 2 plus 2 is not equal to 4, then it's going to print this statement over here. Now, this used to be true, but now this is actually going to return false because it's trying to say if 4 is not equal to 4, which is not true. So if we go into the game and hit play, then what we should see in the output is nothing because here 4. So this is back to our operator, and we can then the right which game and hit back to our script. This is, or if it's equal to whatever Susie is than or equal to, or less than or equal. In parts of this video that can nail this. Today's learning another and statement to do and under. So with that being said, for today's learning objective, what I want you to do is continue experimenting with adding more conditional statements by adding more operators inside of your conditional statements by, I don't know, adding another and statement with 5 plus 10 is equal to, I don't know, 15. And you can just continue onward with what you want to add for your conditionals. Now, another quick thing I want to mention is that you can have more than one logical operator inside of here as well. So we can have an and here, and we can have an or here with another conditional, and then we can have another and here with another conditional, and it can just keep on going for as long as you'd like. So that's something else you can do with your conditionals, and I recommend experimenting with adding logical and relational operators inside of your scripts.
Alright, well, anyway.
Welcome back to my Roblox beginner scripting tutorial guide. My name is Braldev, and in this episode we'll be discussing about loops. Once again,
loops? Don't I have it? Repeat? No.
Another very fundamental concept in scripting, but also programming in general, that you will need to know not only for game. So scripts that we created in the last episode, we're going to disable it and then create a new script inside of the workspace, just like this. And we're going to rename this to the name of the episode, which is loops. And then we're going to hit enter. I'm going to delete this. And first thing I would like to do is try and paint a scenario for you where we would want to repeatedly execute the same pieces of code over and over and over again. If we were to, let's say, have 3 print statements by saying print, let's say, statement 1, and then we were to make another print statement down here. So we're going to write another print statement with statement 2. And then we can do
use the repeat thing.
Great approach to print all of these statements all at the same time. Like these 3 specific lines of code for each block, this is not really the best way to go about this. Because as you can see, this already took 43 lines for, what is it, like 8 or 9 different blocks of print statements that we're trying to print here. So that's why this isn't the most effective way to do it. But there is an alternative that works a lot better than what we're doing right here, and that is called using a loop. So what I'm going to do is select everything that we've created here. So I'm going to hit Control A, and then I'm going to hit backspace. So let me introduce to you what a loop is. A loop is basically what allows us to go through and
we're going to use the repeat statement.
What to do is set this equal to code over and over again until we hit a certain criteria and we know how many times we want to execute this block of code. So what we're going to do is write the for keyword just like this, and we need to write a counter variable. So this can be whatever name we want it to be for the counter variable. We could just call this my counter just like this. And then what we need to do is set this equal to a initial value. So this is going to take in 3 numbers. The first one is going to be the starting value, and this can be whatever starting value you want. I'm just going to say 1, for example, and then we're going to separate this with a comma, and then we need to put down an end value. So when is this loop going to stop? I'm going to say 5 for this example, and then I'm going to write one more comma here, and then we're going to put down how much is this counter going to increment by whenever we reach the bottom of the for loop. So this is going to be, let's say 1 for this case. And then what we're going to do is instead of writing then,
oh my fucking god, wait, no. No.
To actually write the keyword do just like this, and then we're going to hit enter. And then what we're going to be putting down inside of here is our statements that we had in the previous example that I just showed you. So it was print statement 1, and then we just copied this, pasted it down here 2 times, and then we had statement 2 and then statement 3 just like this. So basically what we're doing is we're starting at whatever this counter value starts at, which is going to be 1. And then once we go down this loop for the first iteration, it's going to print statement 1, statement 2, and statement 3. And then it's going to go back up here to increment the value by whatever this incremental number is, which is going to be 2. So now we are on the second iteration. It's going to print 1, print 2, print 3, and then it's going to go back up again and then increment this counter
So she did it more than 5 times, so you do have to start at 1 for this. Okay. Yeah.
variable to 3, go back down 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to increment to 4, 1, 2, 3, and then finally it's going to go to its 5th iteration, 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to stop. So if we go into the game and hit test and hit play, then what we should see in the output is statement 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, so these statements printed out 5 times because we started at 1 and then we reached the last value of 5. And so once we've done that, it basically printed these 3 statements here 5 times. So the equivalence of this would be printing this out once.
This is a completely different way of doing this in this language than I'm used
twice,
to.
3 times, 4 times, then 5 times. This loop is the equivalence of doing this, and it's a much better way of going about this, and it's a very important fundamental concept for you to know about when we want to repeatedly run the same commands over and over and over again until a certain condition is met. So that is how we use a for loop, but there's actually another loop that is also important to know about, and this is called a while loop. Now, a while loop is basically used if we don't know how many times exactly we want to run this loop, but we do know that a certain condition needs to be met so that we can stop this while loop. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop 2 lines, and what I'm going to do is this structure for a while loop is different. So what we need to do is first specify our counter variables separately. So we're going to create a variable using the local keyword. So we're going to say local, let's say my while counter, just like this. And we're going to set this equal to, let's say 1. So basically the starting value right here. And then what we're going to do is write down our while loop by saying while, and then we have to write a condition here. So we can say that this condition is my while counter is, let's say, less than or equal to 5, just like this. And then what we're going to do is say do again at the end of this declaration. So we're going to hit enter. And then what we're going to do is basically write down our print statements that we had in the previous example and then paste it down here. Now, here is something you need to be extremely careful about, and that is incrementing this value every single time that we go through this iteration. Because as you saw with this previous example, all we needed to do was basically write down a print statement.
I'm gonna pause him there because I'm pretty sure I know where this is gonna go. Fine. Yeah. basically. Thank you, Roblox. No. Oh, wait. Wrong way. Print it out 5 times. Yeah. Okay.
And then the for loop would automatically increment here. It still remains at 1 because we never here in the declaration value statement criteria. If you're equal while counter currently is, which is 1, and we're going to add 1 to it. So this is going to result in my while counter being equal to 2 instead of 1. And then it's going to go up until it reaches the condition where it's going to be equal to 5, and then that's when it knows that it can stop. So what I'm going to do is go into the game, hit play, and then what we should see in the output, well, actually, okay, so we still have the previous for loop. So I'm actually going to delete what we had here very quickly. So I'm going to delete this, go into the game and hit play. Then what we should see in the output is statement 1, 2, and 3 being printed out 5 different times in the output. And it basically is working as expected. So that is how we write a for loop inside of our script. I'm going to quickly hit Control Z so that we can have our for loop back inside of a script so that you can see it, comparing the while statement. Now, there's a couple of things I want to show. Like, we can actually decrement our counter. So if we, let's say, started at 5 and then we wanted the goal to be going back to 1, and we make the increment value by -1, then it'll actually go backwards, but it's essentially going to do the same thing. So if I were to just delete this while statement right here and go into the game and hit play, then what we should see in the output is 5 different print statements, again, addressing this for loop right over here, where we print statement 1, statement 2, and statement 3, except this time it's going backwards. So it's starting at 5, then it's going to go down here, and then it's going to decrement it by -1. So then it's going to be 4, and then it's going to go down here, 3, go down here, 2, go down here, and then 1, go down.
Where is it? It functions. This. Let's see if that actually does what I want it to do. No, it does not. Hmm. It's because it's starting out at 0. No, it's not even that. Jesus. Right, well, I'll come back to that later.
Down here, and then finally it's going to stop the for loop. So you can make your loops go backwards as well, which is another important thing to know about. And you can basically do the same thing with while loops as well. You just need to be careful about like what your starting value is, what your ending value is, and also what your increment or decrement values are. What we can also do, so I'm just going to hit Control Z again to just go back and go with our previous loop that we had before. And this time what we can do is actually have a bigger incremental value. So let's say 2, and we were to, let's say, have a starting value of 2 and then have an end value of 6. So I'm just going to delete this while true do statement again, go down here, hit play. Then what should happen is this is printing out 3 times. So statement 1, 2, and 3, statement 1, 2, and 3, and then statement 1, 2, and 3. Because we start at 2, and then it's going to go to its as well. Let's say go back to our previous example with starting at 1, ending at 5, and then incrementing by 1. We can have a loop inside of a loop. So I'm going to make this, I don't know, for loop. 1, comma, let's say 5, and then 1 again, and then we're going to say do print B, just like this. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to start at 1 up here. So it's going to print A, and then it's going to go down here where it's going to print B 5 times before this counter gets incremented by 1 to then print our second A, and then it's going to...
Okay. It is now becoming cluttered in there. I will start disabling these. So this takes priority over anything. It will do this function first before anything. Okay.
To print 5 more Bs before it goes back up here. So if I were to go into the game and hit play, let me show you what this looks like in the output. So it prints A 1 time, and then it prints B 5 times, and then it prints the second A, and then it prints B 5 times, and it's just going to keep going until we reach the endpoint. So this is another powerful way you can use loops, is by using what's called nested loops, having a loop inside of another loop. So I definitely want you to be able to experiment with this once you use loops inside of your scripts. And that is basically how we are using loops inside of our scripts inside of Roblox Studio. Now, as for a final example, what I'm going to do is, let's say we want to use a for loop to change the color of this base plate. Then what we can do is first go back to our script. I'm actually going to delete everything that's inside of here. And what we're going to do first is make reference to our base plate. So we're going to say local base plate equals game.workspace.baseplate like this. And then what we're going to do down here is make a for loop by saying for my counter equals 1 comma, let's do it 10 times, and then we're going to have an incremental value of 1, and then finally do. So what we're going to do here is basically change the base plate's color to a certain color. So we're going to say base plate dot brick color equals, and what we're going to do is pick out a color from the brick color scroll wheel. So if we click on this, then what we can do is identify which color we want to have, and then we can basically just write down the color itself inside of our script. So let's say we want toothpaste. We need to match this name exactly as it is. So what we're going to do is select out of this, go back to our script, and then we're going to type in a brick color value. So you don't have to understand what this means,
Can you
but
use
just follow
RGB
exactly
values?
what I do,
Why is my
and then
camera
we should be
drifting,
able to
dude?
change our brick color. So we're going to say brick color dot new, open and close parentheses, and then we're going to put in whatever color it is we wanted to change this to, which is going to be toothpaste, just like that. And this is how we're going to be changing our color. Now, what we can do down here is we're going to drop a line. Now, here's the thing. When we're writing our for loops, or any loops in general, everything is going to be executed simultaneously without any weight to it. So if we were to basically make multiple brick color changes, then we won't be able to see these changes because it's happening so quickly. So what we actually need to do is pause our script for a specific period of time before we execute the next line of code. And this is what's called a wait statement that I'm going to show you what it looks like right here. So I'm going to drop a line.
Okay, you know what? Okay, that's not what I want. Will that work? So you can't use values like that. Oh. Let's do toothpaste as well. That's not gonna work, is it? Yeah. Where's the eye searing blue? Oh, where's it? Can I do? I don't know what color this will make, but it's doing it. Damn. New youre. No, but that's 255. I didn't put 255. I put 200. Hmm.
And what we're going to do is say task. So this is from Roblox's task library, and we're going to say dot wait, open and close parentheses. And then inside of here, we're going to specify the number of seconds that we're going to wait before we reach the next line of code. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's say 1 so that we can see the changes. So we wait 1 second before we change the brick color again. So what I'm going to do is copy this line and I'm going to paste it down here. And I'm going to change this color to something different. So what I'm going to do is put in the double quotations, and then we can pick whatever random color we want. This one says really red, so we could just auto-complete it by hitting enter. And then we can do this one more time by saying task.wait for about 1 second, and then paste in our line here, and then specify whatever color we want by putting in the double quotations. And then let's say we want to add gold. So I'm gonna select that, hit enter, and now we have our script. But one final thing we have to do is add one more task.wait here so that we can see the changes from this brick color change and then this brick color change, because once we finish the script, we're gonna immediately go back up and then we're going to change the brick color one more time for the next iteration. So now if we go into the game and hit play, then what we should see inside of our base plate is that our brick color, or our base plate's color, is changing every single second 3 times for a total of 30 times, because it's going to change the brick color 3 times per iteration, and we're doing it 10
Holy
times in total.
epilepsy.
So once basics objective, what I want you to do is basically go through and make more for loops, more while loops. You can even try making nested loops as well to change the base plate's brick color. And now that I've showed you how to use task.wait to wait for a specific piece of code to execute, then you can also add that to your scripts as well. You can probably change the brick color of the base plate. You can even change the
Wait, so do they wait for each other? They do. Well, it's understandable. It goes down and then it's told to repeat, so it goes back up and it just keeps doing it. Yeah.
transparency of the base plate, or you could do a whole bunch. Welcome welcome back to my Roblox beginner scripting tutorial guide. My name is Braldev, and in this episode we'll be talking about breaks and continues. Now before we do, I want to go back to our loops scripts that we created in the last episode, because there's something I didn't mention about using task.wait statements for these for loops and also while loops and things like that. I forgot to mention that if we were to have multiple for loops, like one for loop after another, so not a nested loop, but a for loop or a while loop or any kind of loop that happens back to back. Like let's say we had another for loop by saying for I equals 1, comma 100, comma 1 do, and then we write a print statement here saying this is the second for loop like this. You might expect both of these for loops to run, but in actuality, if we go into the game and hit play, then it's not going to print our second for loop, and instead it's just going to go through the cuz operation, and it's going to change the base plate's brick color. It's going to wait execute whatever it is that it's going to execute afterwards, which is why it's important for us to realize when we want to execute our for loops or our while loops, because the order matters when it comes to doing these sorts of things. Now, there are ways we can spontaneously run for loops at the same time, but that's going to be covered in a future episode in my advanced scripting tutorial guide, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. But that's just something I wanted to add on to that before we continued with what we're going to be talking about in today's episode.
Oh, yeah, it's a different
so now that
series
we've covered that,
for
let's go back to
stuff.
our loop scripts so we can talk about what breaks and continues are. So I'm going to delete basically everything that we have in the script up until this point. So I'm going to hit Control A and then hit backspace. And what I'm going to do is create another for loop. So I'm going to say let's make our incremental value, let's say I this time. So we're going to say for I equals 1, comma, let's make some really big number, like let's say 100,000 like this. And then we're going to have our incremental value as 1. Now, here's another thing I didn't mention in the last episode, and that is you actually don't need to have an incremental value if you know that it's going to be 1, because the incremental value is going to be 1 by default. So I'm actually just going to delete that because we're going to be incrementing it by 1. Unless you wanted it to be something different like 2 or 3, then yeah, this is the only time you would need to have the incremental value. But in this case, we don't need it. So we're going to say 1, comma 100,000 do, and then we're going to hit enter just like this. Now, if we were to run this, for loop 100,000 times, it's pretty ridiculous with how much processing power is going to be needed in order to execute whatever is going to be inside of here. So if I were to make a print statement saying this statement is printed, condition has met. Like if let's say we were in the 200th iteration, so what we can do is actually write a conditional by saying if I is equal to, let's say 200, then what we're going to do is use what's called break, just like this. So it's going to go down the loop by starting at 1, and then it's going to keep incrementing until I reaches 200. And once it does, it's literally going to stop the for loop by using this break statement.
Maybe. Re-enable functions. Oh, I'm still in here. And functions is not enabled. Let's see. Nope, it just keeps going. Still doesn't stop. Nope. Why is it just like a runaway? Yeah. I will debug this without proper knowledge. It will happen. Yeah, it won't happen. I don't see anything wrong with the code.
So if we go into the game and hit play, then what we should see is this statement is printed 200.
Well, it'll stay a mystery. I'm not gonna try to fix it.
Times, and it did not print 100,000 times like we were supposed to, because we made it stop at the 200 mark. And so this is very important. If certain conditions have been met for your for loop and you don't want the for loop or your while loop to run anymore, we can do the same thing with while loops. So if we were to delete this code right over here and write a while loop instead, so we're going to say, well, actually, we don't need to get rid of this. What we can do down here is just say our counter variable. So we're going to say local counter equals 1 comma, or no, sorry. So we're going to say local counter equals 1. So that's the value we're going to start at. And then what we're going to do is say while counter is less than or equal to some ridiculously big number, like let's say 1 million instead. We can do this number. So we're going to say do. So we're going to write our incremental statement because, as you know, a for loop does it for us, but a while loop doesn't. So we have to do it ourselves. We have to say counter equals counter plus 1, just like that. And that's going to happen at the very end of the while loop. So next thing we're going to do is check for a condition. If counter is equal to, let's say, 500, then what we're going to do is write a break right over here. Now, the first thing we're going to do is write our
Oh, okay. It all makes sense now. Or at least I fucking hope it does. Damn. Re-enable you. Have some faith. No? Nope. No faith. Never have any faith. This is the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
Print statement by saying
And it came
this
from me.
while statement is printed just like this. And so now this is basically our while loop that does basically the same thing as this.
Who knows, maybe an extra 0 would actually fix all this shit. It just might be going too fast. I have no fucking idea. No. No, it's not. Hell be upon me. Can I call a function in here? That is my question. Okay. Nope. Okay. Genuinely? What the fuck? Sure. This is beyond annoying. I'm not even doing anything of importance. Like, what the fuck is going on? Ooh. Throwing shit at the wall until it works. Staring at this shit like I'm gonna understand it any better. I don't.
Up here, except it's going to stop at 500 instead of 200. We can even confirm this by instead of 200. So now if we go into the game and hit play, then what we should see in the output is this statement is printed in the for loop 200 times, and this while statement is printed 500 times because that's when we decide to stop it. Now, that is essentially how we use breaks inside of a script, but there's another one we can use, and that is called continue. So what I'm going to do is delete these breaks that we had inside of our examples, and what I'm going to do for this for loop is basically say if a certain condition is met, then we just want to skip this iteration. So basically what I mean is if we start at the very top here by saying if I is equal to, let's say 10, then we're going to make a print statement by saying I is equal to 10, so skip this iteration, just like that. And then that's basically going to, okay, and then what we're going to do is drop a line and then say the keyword continue like this. So what is happening with this for loop? So basically, if we start at 1, then it's going to check if I is equal to 10. If it's not, then it's just going to go down here and make the print statement. But if it does equal to 10, then it's going to basically use this continue keyword to skip this iteration so it doesn't make this print statement happen. So if we go into the game and hit play, then what should be happening is, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to break the script. Oh, this is about to be really slow. Okay, so okay, so it looks like the script crashed. It said script timeout exhaust allowed execution time, and that's because if we go to our script, I forgot to leave the
But I just make them look like that and it still works. I can. Awesome. Less typing. I don't see why this is not working. Like, what's the fucking issue? I'm gonna crash out. Awesome? Question mark? Fuck? Genuinely, I think fucking while statements are broken. Like they can't read the fucking numbers from whatever these are called, attributes. What's the fucking point? Like, holy shit. All right, let's do this. This is gonna be so stupid. Is it? Okay. Yay. Pain and suffering. I'm not here for this. I'm not here for this. I'm here to learn and nothing more. Not troubleshoot.
Break statement inside of here, thinking that it was a good idea to just get rid of it. So take that as a lesson.
Every time I used a fucking break statement, it's not working. Jesus. It's not that it's to do. It's 20. Nineteen times. It just works, guys. It just fucking works. Hey guys, it just works. Oh my god, it just fucking works. Explain code. Come on, explain my code to me. The counter reaches. Either reaches 9, the loop breaks. And it's called, although it does not reset the transparency. Currently implemented. What? How is it not gonna reset? Reset? Like, what do you want me to fucking do? Like, you know what? You want to make this fucking it's disabled. Oh, I'm gonna. It's farther than I've gotten before. And I get rid of the counter. Game dot workspace. Mm-hmm. Like halfway there. Mm. Oh, that's why. That's why. That's why. Oh my God, I'm a fucking idiot. Oh, I'm a goddamn troglodyte. Literally several generations behind current humans. Work. Come on. Oh, you can't even do fucking that. You can't even do that. Okay. I'm at this point, I'm just what? Can the if statement inside of the while statement or like just to see, you know? No. No. I have to know. If I do that, will it still break? Or is it because of the limitation I put on it? It's because of the limitation I put on it. What is the absolute what is the fucking point of a break if it's not gonna do its job? Holy shit, man. Let's get just local. Let's oh my god. See if this does anything. No, it doesn't do fuck all or jack shit. Oh my god, man. I guarantee. I guarantee I could put everything back to the way it was. I had it before, and suddenly it worked. Just because I put that greater than sign. Wait 1 second. And put you there. Why are you bugging out? I can't tell it's like, wait. It also has to be behind here, huh? Second. Please. You're not even working. You're not even working now. Like, what the fuck is the point? Holy shit, man. What? What is this? What did I do? What did I do? Like actually, what the fuck did I do to this? Oh my god. Let's get rid of this part. Mm-hmm. Agree. Hard agree, right? Excuse you. Why is that there? Just gonna do this. Fill those back together. Dude, I feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind. Does it just not want to do this? Like, does it not want to fucking answer to this? Yeah, okay. Just gonna close you, reopen you. Hopefully that fixes it. And it does. I'm guessing you can't have wild guess. It would be stupid if this is how it works. But I'm guessing you can't have two of these, right? That calls to the same object. It's a weird fucking way to do it, but okay. Let me be stupid in my way that I do it. Hmm. I mean, back to the task at hand that is of importance. Breaks. The Vinky.
For me to not do that, what we're going to do in here is basically say if I is equal to 200, then we're just going to break the statement just like that. We need to be careful about that. And I think I'm going to do the same thing here as well. So if I is, or no, sorry, if counter for this while loop is equal to 200, then we're going to break it just like this. Okay, so I'm just going to separate these so that it's easier to read. But yeah, take that as a lesson to make sure that you do have break statements if you don't want to execute this many number of times. So what we were supposed to do here is if we go into the game, then we can see that it first states that this statement is printed 9 times, and then it goes to the 10th iteration by saying I is equal to 10, so we're going to skip this iteration. And then finally, it's going to print the rest of the statements until it reaches 200, and that is basically how
Ooh.
this for loop structure goes with continues and also breaks. So these two are very important for controlling our for loops and also our while loops if we reach certain conditions inside of our scripts. So that is what I wanted to show you inside of this episode, and I hope you find this to be useful. Now, as an added bonus, I'm going to teach you about the concept of comments, because when we've been working with scripts up until this point, we've had lines of code that we just didn't want to execute while we wanted other pieces of code to execute, but we didn't want to delete the entire statement because we just wanted to bring it back once we were done with whatever it is we were trying to execute. So I'm going to be teaching you something that you can actually use to save your pieces of code that doesn't run so that we can have other pieces of code run inside of our scripts. And that is with the
Okay.
use of comments.
Come on.
So what I'm going to do is basically
Waiting.
make our for loop and our while loop visible, just like whatever with what I mean is going to be run. It's not basically we're going inside of here is basically comments that make up multiple lines.
That's how you do that. Okay. See? That's what I was. Oh, come here, little dumb. Goddamn. Awesome.
Because if we were to drop a line from this print statement, then it's just going to execute inside of our script. But we can have multiple comments within this block right here. So we can have a line here, we can have a line here, and then a line here. So it's just going to keep on going as long as it fits within the boundaries of this comment block. So now, with that in mind, we can comment out this while true do statement if we don't want to execute it by putting in 2 dashes just like this, and then the hard bracket, and then we're going to add 2 hard brackets at the end. So we're going to drop a line and then add the end bracket and then another end bracket just like this. And as you can see, this code block is now commented out, and we can put down more things inside of here, and this is not going to be executed. So if we go inside of the game, hit stop and then hit play one more time, then we can see that it's just going to be the for loop that executes, and it's going to skip this while loop. And once again, if we want to execute our while loop again, then we're just going to get rid of the comments so that we can show it up inside of our script again. So that's something very useful that I think you should be able to add inside of your scripts if you want to execute specific blocks of code, and if you also want to comment out blocks of code that you don't want to execute in this current time frame. Comments are also useful if you want to just have a human readable way to like express like what certain pieces of code and that's another thing you can do, or just any pieces of code in general. And for whatever code that you don't use, I want you to comment them out using comment.
Shift in.
Welcome back to my Roblox beginner scripting tutorial guide. My name is Brawldev, and in this episode we'll be discussing about events. Now, I want you to imagine that it's your birthday today. You just had a long, hard day of school, and you're walking back home from the bus, and you're about to open your front door. And when you do open your
I don't care about your story time.
A new script inside of the workspace, just like this. I'm going to rename this to events, and I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to delete this code. So events is a pretty broad topic to talk about in Roblox Studio, and it can be very complicated depending on what kind of events you're working with. So for the sake of this episode, I'm going to be introducing to you 2 built-in functions that Roblox Studio has. I'm going to be providing to you 2 built-in events that Roblox Studio has provided to us that I think are the most common ones used that I think you should be aware of as for this tutorial. So what we're going to do is go back to our script, and there's going to be 2 of them. But the first one I'm going to introduce to you is the trigger or the event of when a player joins into the server. And this is called the player added event that lies within the player's folder. Now, it's very interesting because up until this point, we've only worked with the workspace folder contained within the game data model. But this time, we're actually going to be using an event that's contained within the player's folder inside of the game data model. So what we're going to do is go back to our script, and we are going to say game.players. So we're not going to say workspace, we're going to say players, and then we're going to say .player added. And you can tell that this is an event with this lightning bolt symbol over here. So I'm just going to autocorrect this with player added. And here's the interesting thing. So we have our player added event, but we need to be able to connect this event to a function that is going to run when this is triggered. So basically what this is going to look like is we're actually going to put a colon symbol right here, and we are going to say connect, just like this. You can either say connect with an uppercase C or a lowercase c. It doesn't really matter that much, but I'm going to say uppercase C. And then what we're going to do here is put in two parentheses, so open and close parentheses, just like this. And then we're going to put a function within these parentheses. So we're going to create a new function by saying function, open and close parentheses, and then we're going to go on this right side here, which is in between these two parentheses, and we're going to hit enter just like this. And one final thing is we're going to be adding a parameter that Roblox has provided to us, which is the player that has joined into the game for this event. So we can call this whatever we want, but I'm just going to say player just like this. And so this is the structure of how we create events and how we make function that fires once the event has been triggered. This is one way of writing it, but I'm going to show you the other way in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is write a print statement here by saying a new player has joined into the game. And what's also interesting about this is we have the player itself, like the player object, being passed into this as a parameter. So we can actually do things with this player. And just for a simple example, we can print out the player itself just by saying print open and close parentheses, and we can just pass in the player directly. And if we go into the game and hit play, then what should happen is it's going to say a new player has joined into the game, and then it's going to print out the name of my player, which is Brawl Battle, because I joined into the game. I'm going to print what shows, and we can just, simple example, we can print out the player itself just by saying print open and close parentheses, and we can just pass in the player directly. And if we go into the game and
okay, I am going beyond. Fuck. No, how did I do it over here somewhere? Where? You? No, you. No, you. Space, dot, dot, space. Space, dot, dot.
hit open and close parentheses, and we can just pass in the player directly. And if we go into the game and hit play, then what should happen is it's going to say a new player has joined into the game, and then it's going to
Yeah, add a space. Alright.
print out the name of my player. It's the most common built-in events that Roblox Studio has for us that we can use. So I'm just going to hit stop. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you the other way of writing an event. And this one should be more familiar with the way we write functions and how it applies to an event. So what I'm going to do is delete our code that we have here up until this point, and we're going to create a function. So we're going to say local function. We can call this whatever.
I don't want to get rid of this. So
we want. We can say player added just like this. And then inside of these parentheses, we're going to pass in our player parameter just like this. And then we're going to hit enter. So we can do the exact same thing we just did in the last example. We can say print a new player has joined, and we can even print out the player as well. Now, we've created the function. We still need to add our player added event down here by saying game.players.player added connect, open and close parentheses. Now, instead of writing a new function inside of here, we can just simply pass in our player added function that we created on top of here previously. So we can just say player added, which is a reference to our player added function that we just created, and it's automatically going to pass in the player argument just like.
but does it have to be?
That. And this
It has to be after this? Okay. I'm not asking for assistance. Event thing. Thank you. Autocorrect or whatever you are. I will.
is another way we can write events and how we attach a function to these events when they get triggered. So if we go into the game and hit play, then it should basically say the exact same thing, saying a new player has joined, and it also printed out my username right down here. So that is basically how we write events inside of our scripts, and that is how we use the
No. Name. Dot space. This. Okay.
player added event. But now I'm going to be showing you the second event that is very commonly
understand what this means. This is for me. No one else will be able to fucking understand that.
Used, and that is called touched. So basically, every single object or instance that you can see inside of this workspace, like these parts and also the spawn location and this base plate, they have a built-in function called touched, which basically triggers if another part touches it. Now, what this means is we can either have another part touch a part, or we can have our player touch the part as well, because our player is also classified as a bunch of parts put together as well. So this is very useful if we want to have a touch detection for if a player steps on a part. And so that's what I'm going to be showing you how to do for the rest of this tutorial. So what we can do is go into model, and we're going to click on part. So we're going to insert a new part inside the workspace, and I'm going to go to the right.
I'm going to create a murder part as soon as I fucking can. The wall of death. Matter of fact, the wall of death. Death wall. The wall of death. It's red because it wants to hurt you.
Right side, rename this part to touch part, just like this. And I'm also going to go down here, and I'm going to check this property called anchored. Now, basically what anchored.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot. There you go.
Is it's a property that allows us to hold a part in place so that it's not affected by gravity. So what I'm going to do is basically click on this move tool, and I'm going to move it up here so that once it's up here, it's going to stay in place and it's not going to drop down due to gravity, since we have this anchored property enabled. So now that we have this, let's go back to our script, and I'm actually going to delete everything we've had up until this point. So I'm going to hit Control A and delete. And I'm first going to make reference to our touch part. So I'm going to say local touch part equals game.workspace. Dot touch part, just like this, And now what I'm going to do is say touch part dot touched. So this is an event that's contained within our touch part. And then we're going to say colon connect open and close parentheses. We're going to create a new function. So we're going to say function open and close parentheses again. And we're going to pass in.
Why is it doing this thing every single fucking time? Yeah, that works. Jesus.
The other part that touched this part. So we're going to say other part, just like this. And then in between here, we're going to hit enter. And so now what we can do is we can basically print out the other part that touched this part in specific, which is the touch part. Now, specifically what we can do is print out the name of this other part. So we can say dot name, just like this. So we can see what's touching this part in.
Could I do this? Add it, actually. Okay, well.
Side of Studio. So if we go into the game, hit test and hit play, then what we should see is, first of all, the part is floating in midair because we enabled the anchored property. So if we touch it, what we should see is a bunch of parts touching this touch part, and these are all referring to parts that are contained within my character. So we have things like the upper right arm, the head, upper torso, left upper arm, and things like that. So we can keep on touching this, and it's going to basically print out the player again for back to our script. And what we're going to do is create a Boolean value that basically says whether this part is currently being touched right now. So what we're going to do is say local part is touched equals false. So currently the part is
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going.
not being touched. And so basically what we're going to do is drop a line at the start here, and we're going to check if the part is currently being touched or not. Okay, and so what we're going to do at the start here is we're going to write an if statement by saying if part is touched equals false. So basically, if the part is not being touched, then we can trigger whatever is going to be inside of here by saying then like this, and then we're gonna hit enter. Then we're going to move our print statement inside of here. And what we're going to do at the start here is we're going to say part is touched equals true. Now that we know that part is touched is false, we're going to set this equal to true, and then we're going to make the print statement down here. Now to add a cooldown, what we're going to do is put in a task.wait for a certain number of time. We can put in however many number of seconds we can put in here. We can say, let's say 2 seconds. And then we're going to say part is touched is back equal to false, just like this. And this is basically how we add a debounce or a check or a cooldown.
We did the same shit, but in 2 different ways.
Down to our touched event, just like this. We first check if nothing is touching the part, then we're going to say the part is being touched, and then we're going to wait 2 seconds, and then we're going to say that the part is no longer being touched, so we can touch it again. So if we go into the game, hit play, then what should happen is if we touch this part, then it's only going to say one thing has been touched, and it's not.
Oh. So that's the reason behind. Okay. No. Awesome. Good. Right. Handle. Handle. Lower torso. Upper torso. Right.
No longer being touched, so we can touch it again. So if we go into the game, hit play, then what should happen is if we touch this part, then it's only going to say one thing has been touched, and it's not going to repeatedly print out or execute this event until we wait 2 seconds. So we touch it again, it's going to say something else has touched it, and then it's just going to do this after we wait for the cooldown. And that is basically how we add a cooldown to these event calls, and that is by using debounce. So I hope you learned a lot from this episode with events. Those are basically the basics of using events. And now for today's learning objective, what I want you to do is continue to use this touched event or use the player added event so that you can do more stuff with either the player or you can do more stuff with these parts. You can maybe even change the color of these parts if you step on it and make it go back after a certain period of time. There's a lot of possibilities you can do with this. So I encourage you to do that. And once you do that, I want you to go down to the comments so that you can paste your code so that other people can see what you're doing that you feel comfortable sharing. And with that being said, I hope
What a search up how to damage Roblox characters. There's a reason I named it Death Wall. It has to at least cause some harm. Yeah, come on, I want to know how I'm doing this wrong, please. Right, that's cool. Where is it? Let's see. Yep, there it goes. No. No. Yeah, I'm lost, but okay. Well,
you enjoyed this episode. And Welcome back to my Roblox beginner scripting tutorial series. My name is Braldev, and in this episode we'll be discussing about find first child and wait for child, which are two functions that Roblox has provided to us that's going to be very useful in locating objects within our game, and it's also useful to help us understand the structure of how a game is structured. So to recap, a
The
game
child.
is basically comprised of
Destroy the
all of these
child.
different folders that have its own specific use cases. Like let's say this workspace. It shows all of the parts that we can see within this 3D world that basically make up the workspace of the game. Now, when we're understanding this hierarchy, like if we open up this workspace,
Hurt. Yeah, imagine that works. I'd be shocked. Come on. Oh, it's disabled. Holy shit. I'm a little behind. But what would uh-oh, spaghetti-o. Fucking go crazy on here, man. Um, what am I gonna search up? Oh yeah. Look, studio, web player. this work? No. This is not gonna work right here. Yeah, hell no. Fuck is wrong with me? Ooh, I know what I'm doing. Let's see. No. And I just skip the parent part? Yeah, I have no idea. Does he go over any of this? He does. Later. Oh my god, I found the button that makes me... Yeah, there we go. Jesus. Insert.
This workspace has all of these different objects that are within this workspace folder. The workspace in this case is called a parent, and everything that's inside of this workspace is a child that belongs to the workspace parent. And we can continue going down this list by finding more objects that have stuff contained within them, like this base plate. So this base plate has a texture child, and this base plate is the parent of this texture child. And this base plate is the child of this workspace parent. And so you can kind of understand the structure from here on out with how the parent and child structure works inside of the Explorer. So with that understanding, now let me show you some things that can help us organize these parts before we start using these functions. So there's two ways we can organize stuff within our game. One of them is being models, and the second one is being folders. And I'm going to show you what both of them do. So if we go inside of the Explorer and we click on the plus sign next to workspace, and we insert a model like this.
Shit.
So I'm going to click on model. It's going to add a model inside the workspace. Now, basically what a model does is it groups parts together to make up one big part as a whole. That's basically what both of them do. Of this workspace parent. And so you can kind of understand the structure from here on out with how the parent and child structure works inside of the Explorer. So with that understanding, now let me show you some things that can help us organize these parts before we start using these functions. So there's two ways we can organize stuff within our game. One of them is being models, and the second one is being folders. And I'm going to show you what both of them do. So if we go inside of the Explorer and we click on the plus sign next to workspace and we insert a model like this, so I'm going to click on model, it's going to add a model inside of the workspace. Now, basically what a model does is it groups parts together to make up one big part as a whole. That's basically a model. So if we go into the model tab and we click on parts, so we insert a part here, I'm going to go to the right side and I'm going to rename this part to part 1. And what I'm going to do is drag this into the model that we just created. And now I'm going to duplicate this part. So I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to select the move tool like so, and I'm going to move it this way. And I'm going to rename this part to part 2. And I'm going to duplicate it one more time and I'm going to move it this way and call this one part 3. Now, since all of these are contained within a model, if we hover over one of these parts, then it's going to select all 3 of the parts because it's all contained inside of one model. So if I select one of these parts, then it's going to select the model rather than the individual part itself. And we can drag this model around and it's going to drag all 3 parts along with it.
I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go get some water real quick.